We're going to focus in right now on the health of the financial system. Today, the Roosevelt Institute is holding a conference in New York on restoring the system's integrity. Joining us now live from the conference is Elizabeth Warren. She is the chair of the Congressional Oversight Panel on TARP. She is also a law professor at Harvard University. Professor, always glad to speak with you. Thank you for joining us. We want to talk about Vikram Pandit, Citigroup CEO, going before the Congressional panel tomorrow. And we're wondering what you're hoping to learn from him.
Well, we want to go over the history of how Citibank ended up with so much in the way of taxpayer money and what they plan to do to pay it back. It's all pretty straightforward.
Do you think it's too much looking backwards and not looking forwards?
It's both halves. I think that's exactly what we want to do. You know, you have to have a pretty clear picture of how we ended up in this place. And then we want to talk to him about what his plans are on a going forward basis. We're there to watch out for taxpayer money.
Professor, Vikram Pandit has taken some steps, some pretty big steps already to repay the government, raising some $20 billion late last year. Right now, it seems that the rest of the recovery is in the hands of the Treasury Department. They have to decide when to sell the shares in Citibank. So really, what role does Vikram Pandit play in recovering more money for shareholders on that level?
Well, the role that Vikram Pandit has to play is the role he has to play in running Citibank. Remember, we, the American people, are a major shareholder in Citibank, so I think it's appropriate for us to keep track of what they're up to.
Is Citigroup targeted because it took the longest to pay the money back, or it borrowed the most of any bank?
Yes and yes.
Okay, well, short and sweet. Will you be releasing any new reports after tomorrow's hearing?
Not immediately after the hearing. Our next report comes out next week, and our next report actually focuses on GMAC, who was the target of last week's hearing. So we have lots of pieces in progress. The TARP was big, and there's a lot for the Oversight Panel to keep track of.
Professor, the Consumer Financial Protection Agency was effectively your idea. You've been strategizing closely with the White House to try and get a separate agency created. The latest negotiations in the Senate would put it under the control of the Fed. How does that strike you?
Well, what I'm looking for is independence. And what independence means is whether or not it has a separate budget, whether or not it has rulemaking authority, whether or not it has enforcement teeth. This is really, at least from my point of view, about an independent agency wherever it ends up on an organization chart.
Are you frustrated with the discussion so far? I mean, should we just go back to the drawing board, or do you feel like there's a salvageable plan somewhere?
Frustrated. It's been more than a year. You know, this crisis started in active mode in October of 2008. We knew what the problem was. And yes, I'm frustrated, but I'm frustrated because it's now March of 2010. And consumers are still getting squeezed. Consumers are still seeing their interest rates go up. Consumers are still getting charged with crazy fees. Yeah, I'm frustrated. This should happen, and it should happen now.
We thank you so much, Professor Warren, for joining us. Elizabeth Warren there, head of the TARP Oversight Committee.